This is Listen Lakeland, the show that keeps you up to date on all the things that make our city a great place to live, work, and play. Today's host is the Executive Director at Lakeland Now, a community-supported local news organization dedicated to cultivating civic engagement in Lakeland through freely accessible news. She's a graduate of George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and serves on the boards of Lakeland Vision and Friends of Cold Creek State Park. Here's your host, Trinity Laurino.
Welcome to the good life.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Trinity Laurino, and it's great to be hosting this month's episode of Listen Lakeland. This show is an extension of Lakeland Vision. For over 2 decades, Lakeland Vision has been a voice for the citizens of Lakeland, working with community stakeholders to create a bright future for our city. So today on Listen Lakeland, I'm so excited to introduce my guest. I am sitting down today with Daryl Ward, which many of you may know from his time as principal at Harrison School of the Arts. But since 2022, Mr. Ward has been the executive director of the Polk Arts and Cultural Alliance here in Polk County. And today we are all about the role of arts in our community. So welcome, Daryl.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this. It's a great opportunity to share with the listeners and viewers just the different things that we're doing and how arts and cultural opportunities are not only important to our way of life, our quality of life, but how they engage the citizenry, how they activate business and economic incentives and things like that. So happy to be here.
Great. Let's get started. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who've never actually heard of the Polk Arts and Cultural Alliance. I mean, obviously, if you're in that space, you've dealt with them. But, for the listeners out there, tell us a little bit, what is the mission behind the organization?
And that's fair. So Polk Arts and Cultural Alliance used to be the Polk Arts Alliance. We're actually celebrating our 20th year anniversary. They were incorporated in 2004, so 2025, roughly 20 years. We are a nonprofit. We're the local arts agency. So what that means is every county has to designate a local arts agency to kind of be the representative for that respective county in any matters as it relates to the state funding or things of that nature. So back in 2004, Polk Arts Alliance was designated as the local arts agency. So for example, some of you may have seen the arts license plates that, one of the vanity license plates. And when you purchase those vanity license plates, the money stays here in Polk County. I should say it comes back to Polk County. And so the Polk Arts Alliance actually gets the license plate dollars, roughly $7,000, $8,000 a year. And then we use that money to support and promote, market, if you will, arts and cultural experiences, opportunities here in Polk County. So that's one facet of what we do. But really on a day-to-day or a practical kind of thing, what we do is we support our local artists and our local arts organizations. And when I say support, that means through funding, it means through promotional support, professional development, things of that nature. Again, all trying to grow in a sustainable and a progressive arts and cultural ecosystem here in Polk County.
So you mentioned already a little bit the economic impact. Do you have any, sort of stats you'd like to share with us? What financially does it mean to have a thriving arts community in Polk County and in Lakeland?
Right. Well, so the short answer, which is not something you typically want to say on a podcast, right? The short answer is no. And the reason it's a no is because the data that we do have, it's about 7 years old, for one thing, because it was done years ago through Americans for the Arts and so forth. And that was obviously also pre-COVID. So that changed the landscape on a lot of things we'll probably get into a little bit later on how that has impacted arts and cultural experiences here in the county. But we don't have recent data. So as a matter of fact, I'm actually in conversation with Florida Southern College and some of their business or economics department about conducting some research, arts and economic impact data specific to Polk County. There is data for the state of Florida and nationwide and things of that nature, but not current impact data for Polk County. So we're going to work on a study this year, probably into early next year, where we go to local events, local organizations, and try and come up with what does that impact look like. We know that it's significant, but how significant and what does that mean? We're also working with the Central Florida Development Council. They're helping us with that as well, because that's important data for them as well to market for businesses and so forth.
That's a perfectly fine answer. Like, I don't know right now is totally an acceptable answer, but it sounds like we'll have to have you back in a year.
I'm not going to buffalo you with any fake numbers. I mean, we don't really have any local accurate data, kind of the situation.
Yeah. But it's exciting to have a plan to actually get that data and be able to quantify the impact of our arts community. So let's take it back a step. When we talk about the arts community, exactly who are we kind of talking about here? How are we defining arts these days?
That's a really good question. And because it seems like it's a good question, because it seems like it should be a simple answer, but it really isn't. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to our arts organizations, we're having conversations about, are you doing things for the community at large, or your local community in Frostproof, or whatever? Or are you doing things for the arts and cultural community? Because those are not necessarily the same thing. There's obviously some overlap with that. So it kind of depends on, my mission as the executive director of PACA is to support the arts and cultural community. That said, I recognize that forays and inroads we make into the broader community and helping them understand the importance of arts and cultural experiences wherever they are, and by the way, Polk County is a large county, right? Mm-hmm. So wherever they are is important to how we assess. And we've been doing some work, as a matter of fact, with Polk Vision along those lines and kind of putting the arts and cultural barometer on the things that they're kind of assessing and monitoring as well, because again, it's all about quality of life, right? And I've, on a personal note, I've said for a long time that I don't believe your access to arts and cultural experiences should be dictated by your zip code, but it is. So what are we going to do as an organization? What are we doing as an arts and cultural community? What are we doing, in Polk County? What are we doing at the state? What are we doing to provide accesses to those arts and cultural experiences in a broad way for our citizens, wherever they are?
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit, because I know a lot of times when people hear arts and cultural, experiences, they think of things that are a luxury item. A nice to have, not a must have sort of experience. But I know I've heard you say in the past, in talking about arts education, that you've seen the way that arts can change a child's and a student's lives. Can you talk a little bit about your personal experience and maybe the overall vision for arts and culture here?
Well, so I think when we talk arts and cultural experiences, and again, really good question, because we have to kind of have something to frame everything by. I would kind of ask the viewer, the listener, to think back to COVID time about all the things you wanted to do that you could not do. And many of those things, certainly not all, but many of those things were arts and culturally specific, i.e. going to a concert, going to see a live theater, going to a movie. We could just go down the list of the different things that were related to arts and culture that, in fairness, we probably took for granted because we had access to those things on a somewhat unlimited way. Now, there are limitations even there, but when they were taken from us, that gave us pause to kind of reevaluate what are the things that are important to us. And so I always use that as a little bit of an intro, or to say, hey, these are the things that they're not just the luxury things. I mean, yes, they are luxuries when you compare them to shelter and to food and safety and all of that, but they're not far behind in terms of what makes us enjoy where we are, who we are as a people, our culture and our heritage and that sort of thing. On a personal level, I think what you were referring to is when I was a principal at Harrison, I used to speak to people about the importance of arts education. And I would kind of begin with, specific to arts education, say arts education isn't for everybody. Fair enough. Just like an international baccalaureate education isn't for everybody, or an aerospace education isn't, right? We have a lot of choices here in Polk County. But the one thing that I saw with arts education is, number one, it teaches problem solving. That's the beauty of arts education. And I used to use this one example. I was at Harrison, I was assistant principal, and I was doing the rounds evaluating teachers, so I'd go watch them teach. And I went to a dance studio, went to the ballet studio with the teacher. And she was telling the students what she wanted them to do, and they were going to do this 24 count dance. But that wasn't the end of the assignment. they learned the 24 count dance, and then they had to film themselves, or they had to do the 24 count dance forward, and they had to do the 24 count dance backwards, right? That was the assignment. So you could see the students, you can envision what they're doing there in the mirror. The mirrors watching each other and helping each other, walking it forward, walking it backwards. One young lady goes over to her backpack, takes out her cell phone, hands it to her partner, has her partner film her, and then watches herself as she plays it backwards on her phone. That's problem solving. That had nothing to do with art per se, but it was the artistic experience and environment that caused her to think, how can I solve this problem, and so forth. And that's what art does at all levels. But what you were referring to is the quote I've used to tell people is, I personally have seen three things save people, and that's art, education, and religion. And at Harrison, I was fortunate to be at a place where two of those three things were happening together. And it makes a huge difference for the young people that have that opportunity. And I think, again, I always use this example. My daughter went to Harrison. She was a theater student. She is not an actress. And her mother and I are good with that. But what she learned on that stage about how to have stage presence, how to be poised, has allowed her to sit in the CEO's offices of she works in Atlanta, of Boeing and Home Depot, and to ask them for large sums of money because she worked with fund development for a while. She learned those skills on the stage. Yeah. Right. That's a really real life example of what I've seen the power of an arts education can be, along with appreciating the arts and understanding what all goes into that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit biased because my husband is an actor.
Correct.
But we both worked at the Shakespeare Theater early in our career, the Shakespeare Theater in DC, and I know there that oftentimes we have congressmen who would come through, and they have classes that are for lawyers and professionals and Congress people, because everybody needs to be able to present in public.
Yeah, and learn those skills. The other thing personally, I always tell me, my son is an attorney, and his degree in college was creative writing. Mm-hmm. And I used to kid him about creative writing. He goes, "Dad, that's some of the most creative writing I do." And that skills that he learned on putting words in the paper and that sort of thing has worked out well in his non-arts job as an attorney as well. So yeah.
Well, and there was something else. Well, there are a couple other things I want to talk to you about while we have time. And one is the opportunity and access for young people to get involved in the arts. Is that something that PACA is working on?
Well, again, short answer is not really.
Okay.
And the reason is because we're very fortunate in our community. Now, I have to kind of start off with, I always hate beginning, responses with a caveat, but it's important. I'm not trying to make a blanket statement to say everything is hunky-dory and fine and anybody that wants access to arts in Polk County has it, because that's not accurate, right? It's not realistic. But I will say when it comes to arts education and arts opportunities, we are fortunate here in Polk County. Number one, we have a really strong fine arts department in Polk County Public Schools. Now, certainly we have many students that attend, schools that aren't traditional public schools, but in the Polk County Public School system, we have a really robust, Beth Cummings there at the Polk County Public Schools, and the things that she's doing and making sure that students have access to arts is just fantastic. We also have a pretty robust network of local ways students can get involved. Specifically, let's talk community theater, the things that Lakeland Community Theater does, the things that Theater Winter Haven Community, they're very community and youth forward in what in their programming. They both have youth theaters, Lake Wales, going all the way on the ridge. They also are very strong youth. So our students, our young people in Polk County, you honestly would be hard pressed to not be able to access arts experiences if you wanted to. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone has that access, but we do a pretty good job on that. So PACA's role is to support what's already in place, or to look and see, are there gaps where marginalized populations aren't getting access, as I mentioned, and how can we help that? Because again, another statement I've used, the people in Frostproof and Fort Meade should have access to arts just like the people in Winter Haven and Lakeland do. And so how can PACA help support those opportunities through support, promotion, funding, and that sort of advocacy? That's the big one.
Yeah. Are there any specific gaps that you're seeing that you're trying to address?
I really say to me, the biggest gaps come in some of our our more extended communities, like our Davenport or our Frostproof or our Fort Meade and so forth, just because it's really because of distance in many regards. I mean, it's a long way to some of those places. And so to ask, when I was the principal at Harrison, we were at the time, and I think still, Harrison is the only county-wide school, meaning bus transportation is provided wherever you live. And we used to have a few students, not many, for obvious reasons. We used to have a few students come from Frostproof, so they're getting on that bus at 4 a.m. to come to Harrison. And you can see why that wasn't a lot of students that would do that. But that's a long way. And so to try and get access to arts experiences, and that doesn't mean there aren't any. The Frostproof has the Florida Wildflower Studios, for example, and there's historical museums down there as well, and the Raymond Theater in Frostproof. I'm just using Frostproof as an example because it's so far south. But there are those communities that are just doing really well. On the flip side of that, that are out there on the edges of the county. Lake Wales and the Ridge. Lake Wales has a robust arts and cultural community, and Lake Wales Arts Council does amazing things. Bach Tower is over there. The city of Lake Wales, much like the city of Lakeland, has really embraced the cultural arts experience. And what does that mean for their citizens? So we're really fortunate in that regard.
Mm-hmm. But there are I'm wondering, are there any gaps within the world that makes up the arts community, whether that's visual arts with, obviously we have our museum, but a lot of people have pointed to a lack of art gallery space.
Well,
here.
Sure. Yeah. It's kind of stepping back from youth specifically, or young people, and just saying in general. I do think that there is from a visual art perspective, there is a lack of gallery space and or studio space for artists. For a long time here, Artifact Studios here that the Lakeland CRA was involved in, they had studio art space, and they had a waiting list for artists to try and get into that space. So I do think there is, especially here in the city of Lakeland, which is one of our larger metropolitan areas, so you're going to have more people, more artists, et cetera. That gallery space could be something that we could actualize. My dream, I've shared this before with people, so I might as well go public with it. I think we. Is
this an exclusive for Listen Lakeland?
Well, sort of. I've talked to a lot of people about it, but I've never actually broadcasted. So here we go. I think we need an arts incubator. I think we need an arts catapult.
Okay.
Right. And that means gallery space. That means studio space. It also means performing space. I don't think it should be limited to that. But that also means very large space, right? To do all that sort of thing. And the investment that would require from a community or a city. But I think we talk a lot about talent retention in Polk County. And that would be one thing to do to help retain some of our artistic talent, so they don't have to go to Tampa and Orlando. They can stay here and try and make a living and support themselves as artists and train and so forth. And we don't really have that, and we certainly don't have it in a cohesive way. There are galleries, there are studios, but I think that's something that we need. I mean, right now here in the city of Lakeland, there's not really a space dedicated to local artists for gallery space. There are some galleries and they're doing some things, but not like this is a local gallery space. There used to be many of the maybe old time listeners will remember Arts on the Park and things of that nature that used to exist, but those don't exist anymore. The Lakeland Arts Association is working really hard to try and figure that out. But I really think there needs to be a dedicated space, especially as we're talking about the city of Lakeland, that it's Lakeland-based artists for their work. And the Polk Museum, AGB and Alex at AGB, they're sensitive to that, but that's not really their role. That's not their mission. And so while they would be supportive of that, let's figure out where do we get that real estate to try and get gallery space. And then if we really want to dream big, that incubator space, that, an arts incubator kind of situation would be, I think, a really cool thing for Lakeland. And nowhere in Polk County has it, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, I love the vision. I love the idea. I hope maybe somebody listening might be interested in helping to fund that.
Sure.
But yeah, what other initiatives is PACA working on?
Well, certainly we have a couple of things that have now become traditional or annual, if you will. One of our big things that I'm excited about that we do every fall, what we started doing every fall, is, since 2014, PACA has created and maintained the Polk Arts and Culture Hall of Fame, which is located in the History Center, the exhibit in Bartow. When I came on board a couple of years ago, I wanted that Hall of Fame induction experience to be a celebratory one. We celebrate really well in Polk County. We celebrate sports really well. We celebrate community service really well. We do some great things, but we didn't celebrate arts and culture. And so I wanted to create a Hall of Fame gala. I think you attended the first one we had at Bonnet Springs. And the whole goal of that, the first goal was to honor and celebrate the people that have made significant artistic and cultural contributions to Polk County, right? That those are the people being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Your Nat Adderleys, and your Paul Hughes, and so we've inducted 3 or 4 per year. Last year, we did I think 5. This year we did 4. We had it in Winter Haven this past year. The second goal was to recognize organizations locally who are doing really, really cool things. So we have Volunteer of the Year, we have Arts Organization of the Year, which the city of Lakeland won because of the work that they're doing in their cultural arts and recreation department here with Pam and in the work they're doing. So I wanted to honor local organizations and bring back an awards program. It used to be called the Community Arts Recognition Program, but I'm not fond of the acronym CARP. So I don't call it that. I just call it the annual awards. So we did that. And then the third thing,
somehow winning the CARP doesn't have quite the same meaning as an Oscar.
I got a CARP award last year. Maybe I should. Then the trophy would be easy, right?
True,
It'd be a fish. Polk County would have to be a bass. But I could do that. No, it would actually be a tilapia, now that I'm thinking about it. The tilapia of Polk County. But the third thing that we do that I wanted to do, but I really didn't realize how important it was going to end up being, but every year the feedback is great. And that is we get all of these people in the same room. We have artists, we have arts and cultural people, we have organizational people, we have business people, we have community people. And after the first event we did, the one that you attended at Bonnet Springs, I had a local person reach out to me and say, it was so refreshing to see everybody in the same room celebrating Polk's arts and culture. And so so we have a networking time that's become very important before the event starts. And then if you know me, I'm all about, I refuse to produce an event that creates death by celebratory event. So we are in there and we are out of there in 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And because I think that's respectful of people's time as well. So but the Hall of Fame Gala, it's turned into, we've only done it 2 years, but they've been really well received. And that'll be this October as well. We do it in October to coordinate with National Arts and Humanities Month. So that's when we'll do that. So that's an initiative that we're working on, that we kind of keep working on. PACA just finished a strategic plan. We're still kind of putting the finishing touches on that, which is really helpful to kind of give us some guiding direction for the organization. You know how that is, in your line of work as well. It's important to look internally at times and say, okay, where are we? What do we need to do? And that sort of thing. So we've talked about, I'm the sole employee of the Polk Arts and Cultural Alliance. So maybe we need to grow the staffing a little bit to allow us to do some different things and reach out and whether it's getting different grants, working with other local arts agencies around our areas to help them with different things. There's a lot of opportunities. And then advocacy is a big thing, right? In talking with our local elected officials, local meaning city and county, as well as state elected officials, to remind them about the importance of preserving arts and cultural opportunities in their districts.
Yeah, so that was another question I had for you.
I bet you did. I can't go anywhere without getting this question. Because
as you know, there was a big cut to the state budget to arts and cultural funding.
There sure was.
So I guess the question is, what can local arts organizations do in the wake of that? Yeah. Or how has that impacted our community here?
Sure. I think it's a delicate subject because you have organizations that are relying on grant funding, and it's a rigorous grant process. You don't just send in a one-page application and they give you money. It's not like that. It's very rigorous. It's time-consuming, and then it's evaluated. And you have to score above a certain thing, right? And I've been on one of the scoring panels, so I know how the scoring works. And you may or may not even get the funding. Then to kind of make it even more complex is, let's pretend you got 100% of your grant request. Maybe you asked for $100,000. All of the grants that are approved come out of the Division of Cultural Affairs, and then they go basically into the legislative budget process as a grant item. So let's pretend that's going to make up a number, $50 million for the whole state. Within that, the legislators, before it even reaches the governor's desk, the legislators use that like they use all of the budget items. They go back and forth, trading and doing different things and making compromises, et cetera, et cetera. So it's extremely rare that the $50 million that was approved makes it into the governor's budget, makes it in front of the governor anyway. So let's pretend it's slashed. Last year it was slashed, I think it was slashed 67%.
Okay.
So before Governor DeSantis even saw it, it had been cut by 67% through the legislative process. And then last year, of course, Governor DeSantis decided that he wasn't, and I tell people, I respect that the governor of the state of Florida, he or she is the steward of the taxpayer dollars. And whether it's ideological or political, in this case, in these days, that's almost the same thing anymore. In this case, he believed that taxpayer dollars shouldn't fund a particular type of arts and cultural event. You may have heard it on the news. It was the fringe festivals and so forth. And that's within his purview. It's within the governor's purview. What made it a little troubling, though, I think, was the timing, because when it was vetoed, that was roughly 6 weeks before many of the organizations' budgets were supposed to start. And now they were without that funding. So, and I also know that many people who are supportive of Governor DeSantis were caught off guard by that move as well, because you're not talking just fringe festivals when you cut that money. You're talking theaters, you're talking art museums, you're talking children's museums. They didn't get money either. So that was a broad stroke, but to my knowledge, I have to say that caveat. In fairness to Governor DeSantis, I think it's an all or nothing thing. And I don't think he has the right to say, I'm giving money to X and I'm not giving money to Y. So it was a line item, right? That's how that works. So there could be maybe something done, structurally with the process or systemically with the process that's above my pay grade, but I don't know that. So that was certainly troubling. Now, I think there were two positives that come out of that. One is, again, you had local people step up, the philanthropists that believed in Polk County's arts and cultural, organizations and their experiences, and supported, and to the sum of $200,000 helped, supplement, or I should say, offset the losses. It wasn't the full amount. That was never going to be the full amount, but they did help do that. And then I think it also forces organizations to, again, look carefully at what they're doing from a programmatic standpoint. What are the important things that we need to do? Can there be some balance in things that maybe have to go and so forth? It's scary, but there's always a Darwinian element to that when it happens. Like, okay, what are the organizations that you got to be careful if your only funding is coming from anything that can be removed. At a drop of a hat.
Yes.
I would say that if all your money came from a fundraising event, right, as you know, right, you have to build that structure, at Lakeland now, you guys have a variety of levels of doing it.
Yeah.
To me, many people leaned over to me after it happened and said, I'll bet that's terrible for PACA with the budget cut. And I said, no, it's not. I don't apply for those grants because I don't want that to happen. I don't know how to run an organization that I don't know if I'm funded from year to year. I don't. There are people that do it, but I don't know how to do that. So I don't apply for those grants for PACA. Not that as the lone band, person on the band driving the bandwagon here. I would need somebody to manage the grants, et cetera. But so there were some things that came out of it. We're on the cusp of a new legislative session, and just recently, as today, I was reading that there's some divergent views within the prevailing party in the state of Florida, legislatively speaking. So we'll see what happens with that. The grants will come up again, right? They're there again, and so hopefully that cooler heads will prevail, and things that are important to all of those legislators' counties will be able to take place.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, and yeah, we're getting close to time here, but do you think that once you have that economic impact study, do you think it will help sway some of the opinion in the legislature, or those things?
We're running out of time, and this is the most exciting part.
Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't. I when you talk to a legislator, you don't need to prove to them arts and culture matter. Every legislator I talk to, and when you say, hey, do you think arts and culture is important to your community? Every single one of them says yes. Nobody says no. Now, when it comes time to vote for a budget, that's a different thing. They have different priorities. They have different, and I understand that. I'm good friends with many of our legislators, but at the end of the day, they have to do what's in the best interest of their constituents and of their districts. And that may not mean supporting an arts and cultural grant. I understand that. So there's a level of advocacy that needs to happen, but giving them data and saying, hey, arts is important, I don't think that's going to change their minds. I think they already think it's important.
Okay.
It's how do they balance that with roads?
Yeah.
How do they balance that with public safety? Right? That's the trick that they have. And I don't want their job.
Yeah.
So I get that. I really do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation and overview of our arts and culture scene here, not just in Lakeland, but actually all over Polk County. And thank you to our listeners who are turning in to Listen Lakeland. Your feedback is valued, and we encourage you to head over to www.lakelandvision.org to participate in our monthly survey related to today's show topic.
I said, welcome to the good life.
Listen Lakeland is brought to you as a collaborative project between Lakeland Vision, the City of Lakeland, and Hall Communications, a community working together to provide an exceptional quality of life. Want to watch the show? Check out the video version at lakelandvision.org. Thank you for being with us.